Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our regularly scheduled meeting for tonight, May 31st, 2021. Je suis accompagné ce soir par le conseiller Mazzoni, la conseillère Fini, la conseillère Torres, la conseillère Yulin. Aussi, je suis accompagné par notre directrice générale, Maître Raphaël Destasio, notre greffier, Maître Claude Gilbert, et notre responsable de communication, Manon Charles. Alors, cette séance du conseil est tenue à huis clos et les membres du conseil assistent d'une manière virtuelle conformément à l'arrêté ministériel numéro 2020-074 de le 2 octobre 2020 de le ministère de la Santé et des Services sociaux. Alors, s'il vous plaît, si je peux voir quelqu'un pour faire l'ouverture de la séance.
Oui, Monsieur le maire, je propose d'ouvrir la séance.
Merci, la conseillère Torres. Je peux voir l'appui, s'il vous plaît.
Oui, Monsieur le maire, j'appuie la proposition.
Merci, le conseiller Mazzoni. Tout en faveur, s'il vous plaît.
Oui.
Oui.
Merci. Adoption de l'ordre du jour, s'il vous plaît.
Monsieur le maire, je propose d'adopter l'ordre du jour de la séance ordinaire du 31 mai 2021 tel que présenté.
Merci, le conseiller Mazzoni. Je peux voir l'appui, s'il vous plaît. Vous êtes sur DIN.
Excusez-moi, oui, je l'appuie.
Merci, la conseillère Yulin. Tout en faveur, s'il vous plaît.
Oui.
Oui.
Merci. L'approbation des procès-verbaux.
Oui, Monsieur le maire, je propose d'approuver les procès-verbaux des séances du conseil tenues aux dates suivantes. Séance ordinaire du 26 avril 2021, séance spéciale du 29 avril 2021, séance spéciale du 6 mai 2021.
Merci, la conseillère Yulin. Je peux voir l'appui, s'il vous plaît.
Oui, je l'appuie.
Merci, la conseillère Fini. Tout en faveur, s'il vous plaît.
Oui.
Oui.
Merci. Just to go over that, folks, the meeting of the 26th of April, that was one of our regular meetings. The meeting of the 29th of April was a special meeting. That was for the loan bylaw for the work that's to be done on Fenwick. And it was for an amendment to the resolution concerning the tech grant. And the meeting for the 6th of May was dealing strictly with SPAIP files. So that's it. Under that, we're going to move right to the report of the mayor. Just one second. Good evening, everyone. Bonsoir à tous. Welcome to our regular council. We will answer questions from residents that have been submitted until 3 p.m. today on any topic. In the second question period, we will take questions pertaining to the agenda only, and they were submitted via our website during this meeting. And if you're looking for the link for where to go to the website, it was on that page today that you got in the e-bulletin about this question period. Bienvenue à notre réunion régulier du conseil municipal. Nous répondrons aux questions des résidents soumis jusqu'à 15 heures aujourd'hui et qui touchent sur n'importe quel sujet. Au cours de la deuxième période de questions, nous répondrons aux questions relatives à l'ordre du jour soumis via notre site web lors de cette réunion. From the volume of questions submitted, the hot topic tonight is the Sports and Recreation Center. We will happily answer the questions with the information we have on hand now. And as we get more information, we will continue to share these updates. I mentioned in my e-bulletin this morning, this center is the biggest and best news for the town in many decades. It will be the catalyst for the rejuvenation of our community. Both the young families flocking to Montréal-Ouest and the seniors are clamoring for a new accessible building to house all our sports and recreation activities. D'après le volume des questions soumises, le sujet chaud ce soir est le centre récréatif. Nous serons heureux de répondre aux questions avec les informations dont nous disposons maintenant. Au fur et à mesure que nous obtiendrons plus d'informations, nous partagerons ces mises à jour. Comme je l'ai mentionné dans mon bulletin électronique ce matin, ce centre est la plus grande et la meilleure nouvelle pour la ville depuis de nombreuses décennies. Ça sera un catalyseur pour le rajeunissement de notre communauté. Tant les jeunes familles qui affluent vers Montréal-Ouest que les aînés réclament un nouveau bâtiment accessible pour abriter toutes nos activités sportives et récréatives. To be abundantly clear, though we were turned down twice before for the funding, it didn't mean we stopped trying. My campaign platform, both in 2013 and 2017, clearly stated that I would work towards securing the funding for a new center. Goal accomplished. I believe my 4 councillors also stated clearly during their last campaigns that they were in favor of a new center. I ran 2 campaigns that included this point, and I was elected handily both times. Pour être tout à fait clair, bien que nous ayons été refusés 2 fois auparavant pour un financement, cela ne signifie pas que nous avons arrêté d'essayer. Ma plateforme de campagne en 2013 et 2017 a indiqué clairement que je travaillerai pour obtenir le financement du nouveau centre. Objectif atteint. Je crois que mes 4 conseillers ont également déclaré clairement lors de leur dernière campagne qu'il était en faveur de nouveaux centres. J'ai amené 2 campagnes qui incluaient ce point et j'ai été élu facilement les 2 fois. But as I mentioned in my e-bulletin, this is just the first step. We conducted a survey in 2017 that concluded that the majority were in favor of a new center, provided that any tax increase was $100 or less for the average valued home. We are committed to achieving this goal as well. This means apart from the $12.5 million grant and any money the town will inject directly from our surplus, we need to undertake a successful capital campaign. Later in our agenda, we will appoint a campaign chairperson who will finalize the campaign details, build the volunteer staff, and then get to work. Our campaign will have different levels of participation so that people can contribute at any level as they see fit and take ownership of this new project. Mais comme je l'ai mentionné dans mon e-bulletin, ce n'est que la première étape. Nous avons mené un sondage en 2017 qui a conclu que la majorité était en faveur du nouveau centre à condition que toute augmentation soit de 100 piastres ou moins pour la valeur moyenne de nos maisons. Nous nous engageons également à atteindre cet objectif. Cela signifie qu'en plus d'une subvention de 12,5 millions de dollars et de tout argent que la Ville injectera directement à partir de notre surplus, nous devons entreprendre une campagne de financement. Plus tard dans notre ordre du jour, nous nommerons un président de cette campagne qui finalisera les détails de la campagne, constituera le personnel bénévole, puis se mettre à travail. Notre campagne aura différents niveaux de participation afin que des gens puissent contribuer à des niveaux comme ils s'entendent et s'approprier de ce nouveau projet. Whereas some wrong information is floating out there with the goal of dividing this town, I believe that our residents will rise above that din and speak with a strong voice that they are in favor of this project. Whether you directly use the building or not, it will be a community endeavor. When we reconstruct a street, the whole town bears the cost, not just the affected residents. And as we've undertaken for the past 12 years, we will continue to rebuild our roads and rejuvenate our parks, all the while maintaining our tax increases to cost of living, and regardless of the mess that's been foisted upon us annually at the Aglo. Une ville rajeunie est ce que se fera Montréal-Ouest, un endroit attrayant pour vivre. Une ville rajeunie est ce qui continuera d'augmenter les prix de vente de nos maisons. Une ville rajeunie est ce qui continuera à faire prospérer cette communauté. A rejuvenated town is what will keep Montreal-West an attractive place to live. A rejuvenated town is what will keep increasing our home sale prices. And a rejuvenated town is what will continue to make this community thrive. Thank you very much. Stay safe and stay healthy. All right, getting back to the agenda, I think we're going to move right to, hang on one second here, folks. We're going to move right now to the councilors' reports. We're going to start this evening now with reporting on from seat number 2 on matters pertaining to communications, recreation, and culture. Councillor Elizabeth Yule.
Good evening. Bonsoir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We'll start with the community center. The summer children's programs will begin June 28th and last for 8 weeks. All morning programs and most afternoons are currently full, so if you'd like to book an afternoon space, I'd urge you to do that very soon. Spring fitness programs are going well. Classes are being held outdoors and also are available virtually. and registration for summer programming has already begun. Virtual seniors activities this month included the history of rock and roll with Craig Morrison, 2 travel series lectures on Bhutan and Tanzania, and we're hoping to offer some live outdoor get-togethers in Davies Park beginning next month. Of course, that'll depend on COVID guidelines, and our programming will change as the guidelines change. In special events, on May 28th, we held an End Bike Theft event in collaboration with the SPVM and Garage 528. Bike theft, as you probably know, has become a really big problem in Montreal. It's always been a problem, but now since the pandemic, it's worse than ever. So the program was very well attended, and people gave it a very positive response. Coming up, residents are invited to participate in teams or in families for our first murder mystery event on June 12th. It's free and details can be found on the website. On June 23rd, we'll celebrate La Fête Nationale with the theme Tisser Serré, Quebec Cultures. Just as last year, of course, no big crowd activities will be allowed, but we'll be having virtual celebrations and contests to mark the day, and info will be published online and in an e-bulletin shortly. As with La Fête, Canada Day will also be different this year. More details will be available on the website as government regulations become available, but you can be sure there'll be pop-up entertainment as last year, contests, and the annual town chase, which you can register for on Amelia. Lastly, the morning of Saturday, July 17th, we're going to have the Annual Duathlon. It'll take place. It's a family run, swim, run event that's always very well attended. It's free and residents can sign up on the website. The Spring and Summer Artist Showcase will be featuring the theme Unsung Heroes, so you can check that out again online. We have a number of local artists that are participating this season. Moving now to the pool, it's scheduled to open this Saturday, June 5th. So memberships are now available to purchase on Amelia, and you can find the pre-season schedule online. Summer programming will be available for registration in mid-June. And as you know, the preseason schedule is different from the regular season schedule. Day camp preparations are underway with senior camp management working with the Quebec Camp COVID-19 guidelines to ensure a safe and fun summer for the kids. Limited spaces remain available for registration online, although the tennis camp is full for the full 8 weeks. So that's it for me for my report. And if you have any questions at the end of the meeting, you can always post those and we'll answer them after the meeting is finished. So thank you very much. And perhaps we'll speak later.
Thank you very much, Councillor Yulin. Reporting from seat number 3 on matters pertaining to urban planning, finance, administration, and human resources, Councillor Colleen Feeney.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, everyone. Bonsoir. I'll start off with the finance portfolio. A reminder to those of you who may have forgotten, the first installment for your tax was due May 25th. So if you're a bit late now, but please get it in to avoid as little interest as possible. The second installment will be due on August the 27th. So far, we've received 89.5% of the payments for the first installment, and actually 35.5% have paid their taxes in full. So thank you very much, those of you who have done this. The pension audit began on April the 15th, and the draft financial statements will be presented to the pension committee on June the 17th. You will see later on tonight that we will be approving disbursements of $580,000 for this past month. And I always like to give you an idea of the big ticket items where your money was spent in this past month. So of the $580,000, basically, as usual, over 400,000 of it, 450,000 of it goes in between deductions at source, benefits, utilities, and also public works. In the public works department, some of the major expenditures this past month were garbage, which is garbage, recycling, and compost. That was $68,000. the snow removal, and actually there was no snow, but this was for the rental of our snow dump for the year, and also for a study of this. That was $45,000. The environment and trees was $23,000. This included tree planting, tree and stump removal, and the Westminster planters. There was also another $28,000 in contract work. Those were the major expenditures in public works. In recreation, the only thing that was major was some changes to the arena. They had to remove the lead paint. That was $16,000. And then they also invested in some air purifiers and air quality checks and washroom repairs. So those were the major expenditures for this past month. Moving on then to urban planning. As you have probably realized, if you take a walk around town, there's all kinds of renovations going on. And so the urban planning department has been extraordinarily busy. In fact, they have set a record this past month. They issued 75 permits. And this is for a department with a grand total of 2 people. So bravo, they've been extremely hard at work to try to get all your demands through. There could be a small delay because of the extreme demand here, but please be patient, and everybody is working really hard on this. So the next PAC meeting is going to be held on June the 9th, and those submissions were due May 26th. And after that, it'll be June 23rd, and those submissions are due June the 9th. For those of you who are new to the permit application, since the town hall offices are closed, permit applications can only be done online through the town's website, and the procedure is explained under urban planning. And finally, on the seniors committee, the senior outreach program continues, and that's both the groceries and the phone calls. So we are serving over 30 families. The recreation department continues to post webinars online that they think are going to be of interest to our seniors, as Councillor Yulin has mentioned. And there actually is one tomorrow at 12 o'clock called Intensive Grandparenting. And they've also collaborated with the SPVM, and they're working on getting a bilingual workshop where they're designed for seniors, talking about seniors driving, and sponsored by the SAAQ. So this would be about, different requirements and a refresher of different laws and regulations. So that will be very interesting. What they do when they have these webinars is they post them on the calendar on the website. So check the website frequently or from time to time to see what has been posted there and to see how you will register for these. And finally, we have a meeting with the Senior Advisory Committee Thursday this week. And among other things, we are going to be providing input to an awareness program regarding bicycle riding on sidewalks, because that is one of our goals, is to make the sidewalks safe for all residents of Montreal-West and anyone visiting as well. So in the meantime, I hope you get out there, enjoy the good weather, and stay healthy. If you have any questions, please feel free or email me during the month. Thank you very much. Merci.
Sorry about that. Thank you very much, Councillor Feeney. Reporting from seat number 4 on matters pertaining to the environment, public works and buildings, Councillor Maria Torres.
Yes, good evening. Bonsoir à tous. I'm going to start what Public Works have done this month. And in addition to all the regular maintenance to buildings and green areas and road maintenance, they also did a lot of extra work, including when it comes to road maintenance. They fixed a water break at the corner of Westminster and Milner. And they also they were busy filling a lot of potholes on the road, and a lot of putting also asphalt on some of the sidewalks that needed to have repair, and we cannot do them in cement. They will continue to do so. There's still a lot more to do, and they will continue to do so in the month of June. They worked repairing, doing a lot of repairs to the dog run. As a lot of dog owners know, the orange fence is still on, and it will be removed by the end of the week, maybe next week. They needed to make sure that the grass was sturdy enough so the dogs can start running on it. The spring tree planting by the town will start this week. We have as many as 50 trees that will be planted across town. Public Works will continue with tree maintenance. And at this point, I would like to remind everybody, because some of you have been calling about having your tree trims, that aesthetic tree trimming always takes a backseat to emergency tree work. But it will be done. It might take a little bit longer. Now, with the recent completion of the public tree inventory, the town is in the process of evaluating our tree maintenance needs, and will be developing a comprehensive plan to address our future needs. So that goes for the trees and the roads. Now, moving on to the two major infrastructure works done in Montreal-Ouest this summer. The road resurfacing of Avon between Westminster and Ronald Drive began today. Some people might have suffered the traffic. I stood there for 2 minutes and people were losing their patience. Please be patient. There is nothing we can do. It's going to last. It started today and it should be completed by June 14th, weather permitting. One side of the road will be done this week, the other one next week. They alternate in the traffic. And in June 12th, if everything works accordingly, the entire section will be closed because they will do the final pave job that it needs to be done in that area. Please respect the temporary street signs. And for further information, please consult our website where the information about this work is being done. Now, for the residents of Fenwick, as we all know, before we work on the resurfacing of or the reconstruction of a street, we do have an information session. That information session will take place mid-June. We still have to confirm the date, but it's coming up. Please have your questions ready, and we'll be the engineers and everybody involved will be happy to answer all your questions. That's it from me. If you have any other questions, please do not hesitate to call me. I'll be very happy to answer your questions. And please stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Torres. And reporting from seat number 1 on matters pertaining to public security and to special projects fundraising, Councillor Dino Mazzoni.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you everyone joining us tonight. So a very short report. Our PSOs continue to remark that it was quiet so far over the last little while, but since the curfew did end this past Friday, they're going to be on their toes and ready in case anything does occur that has been different for the last 5 months now. In terms of the departmental activity, again, as I mentioned, May was a quiet month. No major incidents or serious crimes were reported. That being said, we are going to be vigilant and doing more night patrols and making sure that we look at the parks and make sure that everybody's safe and obeying the rules. Our PSOs met virtually for a security roundtable with Station 9 back on May the 27th. And this meeting included CSL, Côte Saint-Luc, and the Hampstead Public Security Schools, and some nonprofit organizations that share the territory that is covered by Station 9. Our PSOs also lent a hand to other departments, passing out important notices to residents and businesses concerning the Avon construction work and the old library lot redevelopment. There has also been a follow-up on the line painting, and our PSOs are happy to report that it is almost complete. Almost all of our crosswalks, stop lines, axial lines, and no stopping grids, including level crossing, have been repainted. We are also continuing to focus on a couple of recurring garbage complaints in the commercial section of our town that have occurred over the last few months, due to complaints that wildlife is being attracted by easily accessible garbage. And so as a result of that, 7 bylaw tickets were issued to a few commercial buildings and a couple of residential dwellings for the accumulation of refuse, despite the fact that warnings were in fact given prior to the issuing of any of these fines. We also issued a ticket earlier this month for a private tree removal felling that was done without a permit. Big no-no. 2 tickets were issued for the construction or excavations without permits. 6 warnings and 1 ticket were issued to residents that leave their basketball nets in a manner to obstruct the public domain, and I do want to talk about that. And finally, one warning was issued for excessively long grass. Yes, we do ticket for excessively long grass. In terms of crimes, as I mentioned, very quiet month, no crimes reported thus far for May. We did have 2 citizens reporting suspicious persons possibly verifying for any unlocked car doors. One sighting was on Broughton a few weeks ago, and another was near Avon and Brock during the last weekend. Our patrollers have been keeping an eye out, but we want to remind all of you to be vigilant. Call 911 without any hesitation if you see anything that could be some type of criminal activity. As I talked about earlier, just above about basketball nets with those large sand or water-filled bases. We get complaints every year regarding these, and the town has always tolerated them when they're on the edge of roadways in a safe manner while in use with people actively playing. We ask that these items be removed from the public domain when the game is finished. Often, we find them completely blocking sidewalks, which makes it extremely difficult for people with reduced mobility, for persons with strollers, with golf, grocery carts, etc., certainly the elderly in our town. In addition, it also makes it difficult for a street sweeper to hug the curb and adequately clean the edges of the roadway. They can also be snagged or dragged by our waste removal and recycling trucks or any large vehicle, thus possibly causing a safety risk to a pedestrian or cause property damage. So we're clear, we've issued 6 warning tickets, as I mentioned above, and 1 ticket after the warning was ignored for this offense. And as I mentioned about grass that's longer than 15 centimeters, we've noticed that grass on some properties has not been cut this season, and we actually do have bylaws that prohibit this to continue to happen to let weeds grow or grass grow at a height of more than 15 centimeters. So again, we will in fact ticket that. That's the end of my report. Now, I do just want to mention quickly, as the mayor indicated in his report, we are, sort of part of my role as a councillor responsible for special projects fundraising, we are working together on the project for the Sports and Recreation Center to raise money in this town. That project is underway. The fundraising capital campaign will be underway. And we want to mention that everyone in this town is going to have a great opportunity to be participatory in this process and put their contribute in some way or other to this successful endeavor. So we look forward to that. So, and if any of you have any questions, by all means, we do have a question period after the end of the meeting, or the second question period. And or you can call me on my cell phone or text me 514-949-3055. And that's my report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mazzoni. So that's the end of our councillors' reports. We're going to move to a first question period. Now, the first question period was extremely long tonight. We have a lot of questions. We have a 45-minute limit. So I'm going to try and get through as many questions as possible. Whatever questions I'm not able to read out and answer tonight, they will be answered by email within the next day or two. All right, so I just wanted you to know that we have the answers, but if we can't read them all out in our 45 minutes, then we're going to have the answers emailed out. First question from Dominica Puccini, 24 Ronald. Good evening, Mayor Masella and council members. Thank you for filling in the stairs from Courtney to Ronald and for repaving the caved-in asphalt on Ronald. Question 1, the new owners of 16 Ronald Drive next to my home do not maintain their front yard. Grass is not cut and yard is not maintained, an eyesore. I also sent an email to Councilor Mazzoni with a photo and would appreciate this matter being addressed. And question 2, traffic on Ronald from more vehicles and especially heavy trucks is noisy, causing more pollution and also extremely invasive and dangerous. Help. Councilor Mazzoni, can you answer the questions, please?
Yes, there you go, Mr. Mayor. First of all, thank you, Dominica. I appreciate the question. And in fact, as I just mentioned in my report, if grass is longer than 15 centimeters, we will ticket that. So what we're going to do is we're going to provide this information to our PSOs. They'll do a follow-up and they'll inform the owner of the property of the regulations that are in place. With respect to your second question about traffic on Ronald, we're looking at the data right now. It's being collected on a radar that we've installed on Ronald Street to calculate if there's any increase in traffic in the area. And we'll compare that information that we receive to comparable time periods before and during the Turcotte project. If the results show a significant increase, then we will consider an appropriate remedy. And this data will be studied by our committee, the Traffic and Safety Committee, and the town in the short term. Again, if you want to speak to me directly about that, by all means, please call me. I'd be more than happy to talk to you about it. Thank you for your question, Dominica.
Thank you very much, Councilor Mazzoni, and thank you for your question, Ms. Buccini. Second question from Robert Piccioni, 155 Brock South. Where does the current debt of the city of Montreal-West stand? Does the city plan to borrow more money to fund this project? How will this project impact the debt? Councilor Feeney, if you could answer those questions, please.
Yes, thank you very much, and thank you for your question, Mr. Piccioni. Currently, as reported in this past month's Informer, the town debt stands at 14.3 million. Your second question, do we plan to borrow money to finance the recreation project? Yes, we will be borrowing money for this. It makes sense. We do this for our infrastructure projects. What it does is it helps spread the debt over the length of the asset, and it's also equitable in that it spreads the debt over the number of people over the number of years using it. But I have to say that we are very happy. We have our strategic financial plan, which was developed in 2017. We set out limits regarding our debt, the percentage of the debt that we want to pay, the review of the debt every year. And sometimes we accelerate our debt payment when we do have some additional funds. So we're managing it very well, and we will use those action items from the strategic financial plan to guide us in determining, how much debt we will be able to take on. Your third question, how much will the debt impact us? We will be letting everybody know this. It's premature at the moment. Really, what we have to work with first is we have to find out, do the plans and specifications for the project, find out what the cost is, find out what our fundraising efforts will be, and then we will go for a loan bylaw. And based on the fees that available, the interest rates available at the time, only then will we really know what that amount will be. However, as the mayor made and point to in his earlier report, we are going to be doing this fully knowing and respecting the wishes of the residents that we do not keep this debt. We keep it in the range of the $100 for the average family household. So we'll get that information to you, but it will be a while before we have that final piece. So thank you very much for your question.
Thank you very much, Councillor Feeney, and thank you very much for your question, Mr. Piccioni. Next question comes from Kevin Brothaler, 27 Valentine North. Mr. Brothaler is asking me the best way to get in touch with me. Mr. Brothaler, I need to apologize to you. I received your email. I validated the answer with Councillor Mazzoni, but apparently I didn't end up sending it. So I will send that answer tomorrow. I apologize for that. Usually the best way to contact me is by email. Any kind of respectful emails will get answered right away. And unfortunately, Mr. Brothaler, between confirming with Councillor Mazzoni where they stood on your question, I forgot to send out the answer. So I apologize for that. Your second question, in the email I received this morning, it said, we are committed to invest in and rejuvenate our parks. Achieved. I agree, most of the park seems to be in decent shape. However, I would humbly ask for some more love and attention to be given to the park at the corner of Ballantyne and Sherbrooke next to the Pharmacy parking lot. The grass could use some love, and the playground needs some fresh sand and a touch up as large weeds are growing underneath it. Thank you. Can I ask Councillor Yulin to address that question, please?
Certainly, yes. Thank you for your question, Kevin. You're quite right. We do have a couple of parks in town that need a little bit more TLC, and that is one of them. We did do some new landscaping in 2019 at that park, but that isn't to say it couldn't use some more. I'm going to be honest with you, it's unlikely that any kind of a major renovation is going to be done in that park this summer or in this mandate, but certainly in the next couple of years, depending on who's still around the table, we are all committed to looking at that park and a couple of others in the town that need a refreshing redo, and that is one of them. It's the entryway to our town, and we want to make sure it looks good. In the meantime, we can certainly speak to the folks who cut the grass and such to make sure it's not weedy, but anything major will have to wait a year or two before we get to that. Thank you very much for your question.
Thank you very much, Councillor Yulin, and thank you for your question, Mr. Brothaler. Next question comes from Alexandra Watson, 205 Strathern. First, a word of congratulations to the Mayor and Council for successfully obtaining the arena grant. This is major news for the community. Two questions. We are experiencing incredible levels of construction cost inflation. My business is experiencing 25% plus inflation since January. When was the last cost estimate carried out? And what financial parameters have you set in terms of cost for a go, no-go decision? And second, tennis is hugely popular in town this summer. Squash is as beautiful and beneficial and is played year-long. Would you consider including 2 squash courts in the project? For your first question, the cost estimate that we have was based on 2019. So the first things that we have to do is when we have plans in Divi is to go and have that updated. When we have that updated and when we apply the objectives that we set out in our strategic financial plan, that's when we're going to be able to base our decision, go, no go, as you mentioned it. We'll have a better idea of what we've been able to raise in our capital campaign, and that will see how that translates to our bottom line number, our goal of not going over $100 for the average price home. Your second question about the squash courts, right now the master plan, which is online, if you want to go see what the master plan, what the project has included in it, it's online on our website. You can look for the recreation center online. Right now it does not include that. Those plans aren't finalized yet. That's something that we can look at, and we'll take note of your suggestion. Thank you very much, Mr. Watson. Next question comes from Jim Mullally, 112 Broughton. I have noticed lately that the recycling has been picked up using a regular garbage truck. Does that mean that the recycling is being treated as garbage? And second, on Earth Day, April 22nd, I submitted the above question to Public Works via the web and never received a reply. After completing a town survey on recycling and composting, I again submitted this question in the comment section and no reply. Are the questions of this nature only answered during council meetings? Councillor Torres, if you can field those questions, please. Councillor Torres, you're on mute.
Sorry again. Thank you for your question. I will be glad to answer it. I'm going to start with the question, the number 2, about your question that you submitted. As you know, because you've been talking back and forth with the Director of Public Works today, I do believe there was a mistake. He did answer on April 22nd, but he made a mistake on the address. Therefore, you did not receive it. But he always answers the email. So this time was a mistake, and we apologize for that. Now, you said that you noticed lately that recycling has been picked by garbage trucks. Yes, you're right. They're not, well, yes, right or not. The recycling is being picked up by trucks that do look like garbage trucks. They do have the lift on the back, because now we have those big blue bins. They pick it up and dump it on the truck, as if it was a garbage truck. The big difference is that they're completely 2 different operations. The recycling does have a different destination. The recycling that is collected in town goes to the sorting company that sorts out the recycling, and then they dispose it and send it to their final destination. So go back to the question, it is not treated like garbage. The trucks might look like, but they're completely different operations, and they do not end up in the same place. Thank you for asking, and if you have any other questions, please feel free to contact me.
Thank you very much, Councillor Torres, and thank you for your question, Jim Mullally. Next question comes from Rachel Irwin, 36 Crestwood. Is it possible to change the noise regulation for lawnmowers on the weekend from 9 p.m. to 5 p.m. to allow peaceful summer meals and relaxation outdoors? Councillor Mazzoni?
Yes, thank you, Rachel, for your question. We're currently studying that. Our town employees are actually looking at updating the rules on public nuisance, and so we'll consider your suggestion, and you'll hear of that news if something of that sort is changed. Thank you again for your question, Rachel.
Thank you, Councillor Mazzoni, and thank you for your question, Rachel Irwin. Next question, there's the next 2 questions actually from 2 different people, but it's the same question. Cynthia Kumas at 443 Westminster and Jordan Burson at 63 Roxton. Concerning the new plans for the recreation center, is there any thought given to building an indoor pool? Considering an outdoor pool is used at most 2.5 months per year, would an indoor pool be more useful to residents? Unfortunately, the master plan of the project doesn't provide for an indoor pool. That's a whole other level of expense that really is outside what this project could come to fruition with. So no, unfortunately, right now, our project does not include an indoor pool. However, we do have an excellent deal with Côte Saint-Luc. COVID kind of put a little bit of a crimp on that, but Côte Saint-Luc allows us to share their facility, their aquatic center. So as things start to get back to some semblance of normality, you may want to reach out to Côte Saint-Luc to see if we can use, if non-Côte Saint-Luc residents are allowed to use their facility again, because as I said, we had to deal with them and we are allowed to use, in general, in normal terms, we're allowed to use their aquatic center. So Cynthia Kumas and Jordan Burson, thank you for your questions. A next question comes from Asher Waldman, 167 Brock North. If the sports center bids come within the 22.5 million, would the town demand a bid bond and a material and labor bond to guarantee that the project will be delivered on time and as per the price quoted? Would the architects and engineers be bonded to guarantee that any error or omission in the plans and specs that might increase the cost will be covered by that bond? If the sports center bids come in higher than 22.5 million, would the project be canceled? And is that a turnkey contract, i.e. all the equipment, supplies, phone and computer systems included? So to answer some of the questions, the contract will be drawn up in compliance with our current municipal contract management rules, as well as the construction law. The objective will be, in fact, to control the progression of the costs and respect the obligations of the parties regarding the conduct of the project. The legal options allowing this objective to be achieved will be studied during the phase of drawing up the plans and the specifications for the construction work. For the third question about the 22 if we surpass the 22.5, the answer is not necessarily. The town will make a decision on that in accordance, as we said before, trying to respect our strategic financial plan. We have a dedicated team to make sure that we're respecting that. We've been respecting that since we adopted it. So that's something that's going to continue to guide us. And is it a turnkey project? Will all the equipment and supplies and phones be included? Well, we have most of that already. We have most of our computers. We have most of our telephones. It's just a question of moving them from the old abandoned or useless buildings into a more functional and openly accessible building. Thank you for your questions, Asher Waldman. Next question, and actually these, I'm going to put these together because there are similar questions asked by Mark Lieberg, 61 Nelson, Linda Hammerschmidt, 226 Ballantyne North, Lavanya Hirmath, 226 Westminster North, and Anne McLaughlin, 59 Strathern North, Smita Amaranth, 11 Westland. So it concerns whether or not we have plans to put a dog run in relation to this new project. So I think the best way to answer this is to say, we don't have current plans right now. We don't even have plans right now. That is something that we can look at to see if we can include some kind of a dog run in that space near the new building. But I can't say that it would be in a phase 1 of the building or phase 2 when we look at some of the other installations right next door. So I can't say that, but it is something, like I said, it's been mentioned by 3 or 4 of you tonight, and it's actually even mentioned now in a question that we received for the second question period from Natalie Garson on Ballantyne North. So that's a valid question. That's something we'll look at, but we can't promise whether it'll be in phase 1, phase 2, or if we have space to do that. Thank you very much for your question, Mark Lieberg, Linda Hammerschmidt, Lavanya Hirmath, Anne McLaughlin, and Smita Amaranth. Next question comes from Catherine Menorgan, 8018 Avon. First question, with the town election just months away, could each council member speak to their plans to stand for office or not? And when will the seasonal traffic calming bollards on Avon be reinstalled? Does the town have a plan to control the speeding on Avon? So for the first one, for the first question about whether we're standing for re-election, I'll start and then I'll go to each of the councillors. I stated in January, or actually in December, that I am standing for re-election. So that's my answer. I'll start with Councillor Torres. Go ahead, Councillor Torres.
Thank you for asking, and it is my intention to run again. Thank you for asking again.
Thank you, Councillor Torres. Councillor Feeney?
Yeah, I'm very excited about our new recreation project. I hope to be part of it. In all likelihood, I will run again, but I'm not ready to make a 100% commitment at this moment.
Thank you, Councillor Feeney. Councillor Yulin?
I would echo Colleen's comment as well. I've been doing this now for almost 16 years and in the recreation portfolio. So the idea that we would have a new recreation center is just like a dream come true. So I'd love to be around for that. But if this year and a half has taught us anything, we never know what life will bring. So I will reserve my, I'll reserve my throwing my hat in the ring for certain for another month or so, but I'm inclined to say I would like to run again.
Thank you very much, Councillor Yulin and Councillor Mazzoni.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's my every intention to want to run again in the next election, to stand for re-election. This recreation project is way too important for me and for a lot of people on this council and many people in our town, and I want to see this project to fruition. So if by virtue of standing for re-election, I can get that, at least be participatory in getting that project to come to fruition, that's the goal.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mazzoni. And for your second question, Mrs. Menorgan, the seasonal traffic calming issues on traffic calming measures on Avon are due to be reinstalled. They will be reinstalled soon. We were supposed to have moved to permanent ones. And as I've mentioned in the past, because we were not able to repave that section of Avon between Westminster and the NDG border, because we will actually have to open up that road and take care of some underground conduits. Because we're not able to do that, we're not able to, it wouldn't make sense to put in permanent traffic calming features just yet, because we're gonna have to rip them up in a year or 2, 3 years when we can get organized with the City of Montreal, because our pipes unfortunately connect to their pipes. And until we can get on the same page, it's a bit of a process when we're dealing with the agglomeration. So there will be some permanent things there eventually, but in the meantime, there will be seasonal things that should be coming soon. Thank you for your questions, Mrs. Menorgan. Merle McPhail, 8023 Avon. The story circulating about the new housing complex is that Avon will be turned into a boulevard to help cars enter and exit the parking spaces for this building. Is this true? And why is the fire lane not a possibility for the situation instead? Please clarify how much the dog park costs. I realize this is old news, but I'm not clear on the cost. And due to COVID, will we be allowed to vote online? So for the first question, for accessibility and safety reasons, and because of the underground constraints, the developer will position the entrance on Avon. We could not use the fire lane strictly because it would make too sharp of a turn to get into too sharp of a slope to get into the garage underneath. So the entrance will be from Avon. In terms of the dog park costs, I can answer that for you. When we redid the Davies 1, the first phase of Davies Park, that included the dog park, it included the children's play area, and it included some of the original pathways. So that altogether came out to $530-something thousand. I don't have a separate number itself for the dog park, but of that $530-something thousand, we had received a grant for $320,000. So for that whole area, the kids swing, that first phase of Davies Park was the kids swing and the dog park. It was a net cost to Montreal-West of about, I guess I would make it $210,000, but I do not have a breakdown what part was for the dog park and what part was for the kids play area. Same kind of question. Thank you for your question, Merle McPhail. Oh, sorry, you had one more question. Due to COVID, will we be allowed to vote online? I'm assuming, well, I'm going to say online is not allowed. I'm assuming you may have meant mail-in ballots, and that's something that they're still working on the feasibility for us in town. So as soon as we have a report from the administration, we'll have an answer for our town. Thank you for your questions, Merle McPhail. Next question from Tom Johnson was also already asked and answered. It's concerning the cost for the dog park. And again, as I mentioned, it was altogether the dog park and Davies Park together. Next question from Barry McLaughlin, 76 Percival. Does the town have any plans to repair the Percival parking lot? The lot presently has 2 or 3 large potholes as you enter the lot, making it difficult to navigate the entrance. In the years past, it seems that when they repainted the lines, they just painted over the potholes, ignoring the problem. I would love to hear if you have a plan in place. We actually did carry out a preliminary study for the repair of the Percival parking lot, and not just a resurface, an actual going down to the bottoms to fix it properly, including the proper lighting. We had an aborted attempt at some lights over there, and we were looking to make more acceptable permanent lighting. But due to the projected cost of the work and the other priorities that had to creep up in the infrastructure that we had to address, we're not able to integrate that program or that repaving in our 3-year plan. That's 2021, 2022, and 2023. So we'll wait to see when the next granting cycle comes with the government to better announce scheduling for this work. Thank you for your question, Barry McLaughlin. Next question from Peter McLean. It's the same question that Mr. McLean has about bicycles on the sidewalks on Westminster. And the second question, is the city liable for not enforcing its own rules? So for the first part of the question, I think Councillor Feeney will answer in conjunction with Councillor Feeney and Councillor Mazzoni. So go ahead, Councillor Feeney.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you, Mr. McLean, for your question. Yes, bicycle safety is definitely important. Councillor Mazzoni and I are working on a plan, and the plan will likely involve first an awareness program, and it'll bring in the public security officers, and in all likelihood maybe some new signage, and also the police collaboration with the police. For those of you who are listening, who are not aware, you are not permitted to drive your bikes on sidewalks. And this is a bigger problem on Westminster. There is signage up there, but is quite likely ignored. So we want to bring up this awareness campaign to make it safer for all pedestrians and people walking and around. So you can walk your bike on the street, but you can't on the sidewalk, but you can't drive it on the sidewalk.
Thank you very much, Councillor Feeney. And for the second question, Councillor Mazzoni.
And then Mr. McLean's question, whether a city is liable for not enforcing its own rules. So the answer is that our town certainly has the discretion to apply its own municipal bylaws and rules. I'll give you an example. We were talking about this before we came on live tonight. You know, during the pandemic, we relaxed the restrictions on overnight parking because of COVID, etc. And so that was a decision we made. That's a positive, I guess, decision not to enforce our rules. But what it comes down to is whenever a rule is not enforced, then the questions become whether or not by virtue of us not enforcing it, that we cause a prejudice in the process. And if somebody wants to challenge that, if somebody wants to debate that, they can certainly do so in the court of law. But by virtue of our statute as a town, the City and Towns Act, we can choose to apply the rules we have in place.
Thank you very much. Sorry, thank you very much, Councillor Mazzoni, and thank you for your questions, Peter McLean. Next questions come to us from Daniel Marcuzzi, 446 Wolseley. Is it permissible to perform noisy construction work on weekends and holidays? I've been told by PSO that work can be done between 10 a.m. and 7 p.m. and it's okay to use a jackhammer, causing very high and persistent noise, but leaf blowing at the same times is not allowed. Why is construction work allowed on days of rest? And second question, will the town proceed with the rec center project if it is determined that the taxes will go up more than $100 per household as it was originally budgeted? I surely hope not. If Councillor Mazzoni, if you could deal with the first question, I'll deal with the second.
Yeah, so Mr. Marcuzzi, and by the way, thank you for your question. Missing a lot of you in person, by the way, but we do appreciate seeing your questions here online. Mr. Marcuzzi, if you would like, go to our website, and we have a calendar, not a calendar, but certainly a schedule as to the type of activities, in question, whether it's a lawnmower, a leaf blower, any construction work, and then the days of the week and the permissible hours within which you can engage in those activities. I don't want to read you out all the schedule. It's quite, start reading every box and what time. But for the most part, you have it starting anywhere during from 7 a.m., depending on what type of activity you're talking about, to anywhere between 5 to 6 p.m. at night. So check it out. Look at the website, and if you have any specific questions, you can either contact Public Works directly or certainly call me, and I'll direct you to the part of the website the information is contained. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mazzoni, and thank you for your questions, Mr. Marcuzzi. Next question comes from Andre Chenier, 430 Hudson. My question is, how can you tell homeowners that you keep the cost of this $12.5 million sports and recreation center and only increase our taxes $100 a year? I have had extensive analysis performed of 12 municipal island suburbs, and here are some results. Montreal-West has the second worst per capita bank debt, just behind St. Anne de Bellevue. Wealthy communities of Hampstead and Westmount have much lower debt. Our debt as of December 30th, 2020 is $13,489 with interest of $491,149 annually. The project is not excited and will ruin our town financially. To answer your questions, I'll answer all three of them actually. We've made important choices in the recent years in order to make up for the maintenance deficit of our municipal infrastructure. Had that been maintained over the years, we wouldn't have to be at making the decision now whether to close our existing buildings and do without or to spend the money and rejuvenate. However, we did do an informed, we came up with an informed strategic financial plan, and that's what's going to continue to guide us. And even to answer the second question from Mr. Marcuzzi before, that's what's going to continue to guide us. We're still going to aim for that $100 for the average price home, and that's what's going to guide us on whether we're going forward or not forward. Whether or not you talk about whether you like the project, you're entitled to your opinion, and I appreciate you sharing it with us. Thank you for your questions, Henri Chenier. Robert Barnes, 227 Bedbrook. Congratulations for achieving major progress on the sports complex. We need swift demolition and reconstruction to minimize the disruption to this major recreational infrastructure. It is a shame that the disruption could not have coincided with the 2021 pandemic. Mr. Mayor, your message today mentioned inclusion of Bedbrook residents in the process. Our family living right across the street from the current Legion rink is eager to contribute. Can you briefly describe how Bedbrook residents will take part in the process and whom we should contact to offer our participation? Thank you. Throughout the process, I've said that we will be getting in touch with certain populations. I mentioned the seniors, I mentioned the MATA, I mentioned some young families, and I also mentioned the residents of Bedbrook, because as you mentioned, Dr. Barnes, you're the ones who are going to be most intimately affected during the construction period. So the idea was that we would get 3 or 4 representatives from the Bedbrook residents, keep you more tightly informed, get feedback from you on what's working, what's not working during any kind of reconstruction, and see if we can address those questions quickly and try and solve any problems as they creep up. And I do have your name, and I have your name, and I will keep it in mind when we reach together to get these 3 or 4 representatives from the area. Thank you for your questions, Dr. Barnes. Sylvia Gervais, 164 Wolseley. Not questions. Congratulations, Mr. Mayor and Council, for the work well done. My children enjoy the old facility. Let your kids keep enjoying the newer, safer facilities. And number 2, I'm very unhappy with what Mr. Morin is doing. Keep up the good work and thank you. P.S. Let's get more streets repaired. Thank you, Ms. Gervais, and we will not stop repaving our streets, repairing our streets. Vina Sangwan at 130 Percival. She asks a question about, her first question is about having a dog park in the other area. Having another dog park close to the new project. So as I answered before, it's something we will consider. I don't know if it would be if we went that way, if it would be a phase 1, phase 2. We don't know anything about that. We don't know even where there would be space, if there would be space behind the building. So we'll keep it in mind. And your second question was, how long will the main dog park continue to be fenced in? There's been no access to the grass since April 26th, complete closure April 26th to May 16th, access to the sand only since then. So as Councillor Torres mentioned in her thing, from what we understand, the protective fencing will come off within the next week or 2. Okay, so they're just trying to give as much time as possible for the seed to take, for the grass to take. 134 Percival, a question from Janet Rennick. Comment, as a longtime resident of Montreal-West, I have never received an angry, defamatory letter regarding someone in public office like the one aimed at the mayor that was deposited in my mailbox by a town resident last week. I found it deeply disturbing that someone had chosen to express their personal opinion in that way. While we're all entitled to our opinions, and the one expressed in that letter is certainly not mine, there are certainly more productive and less derisive ways of communicating with one another. Thank you for your comment, Janet Rennick. A question from Ian Robinson, 143 Ballantyne. Many years ago, the idea of selling the land present City Hall is on, and some adjacent land was explored. In fact, the ideal was approved by the city council and mayor. Any construction would not be near existing residential homes and would bring substantial monies needed. Further to the mayor's announcement of the new development, would this council consider in their plans moving City Hall to the new site and selling this piece of land? Thank you for your question, Mr. Robinson. That's not something we've ever entertained. I have to be very honest with you. That piece of land that the town hall is sitting on is probably very valuable. I can't question that, but that's a fairly important heritage property. And like I said, we've never considered it. I don't know which council and mayor you spoke of that said that they had approved that. I'm not sure. That was before my time. It certainly wasn't me. And that new building right now does not include or cannot include city hall space, town hall space. That's the same reason why the library is not in that space. It's strictly a sports and recreation. The grant that we received is sports and recreation. So the having the library or city hall in there is not an option. So thank you very much for your question. Joyce Crowley, 229 Wolseley Avenue North. Does the town plan on approaching major companies, Bell, et cetera, to name the new civic center in their honor in exchange for covering the majority of the fundraising dollars required to build it? This offer could include the option of either full naming rights, example, the Montréal-Ouest Bell Civic Center for 10 to 12 million dollars, or perhaps naming rights for the civic center building signage with additional per room sponsorships coming from other major companies. I also hope that this project doesn't go over cost estimate and that taxpayers are not required to pay more than the projected extra $100 per year. So the capital campaign, as it's being structured right now, we're looking at as well naming things now, whether it's the whole building, whether it's dressing rooms, whether it's an atrium, whether it's could be 100 other things. It could even be bricks, buying bricks. That's why I was saying before, there are many levels. So yes, this is something that we're looking at. It hasn't been clearly defined yet, and we have to see if there's any appetite anywhere. But that is something where we think we'll get some major interest. Councilor Mazzoni, I don't know if you wanted to add anything.
I was just going to say, I mean, the goal is to really involve as many people as possible in the process. So I think, Mr. Mayor, you also mentioned, if maybe I am, or at least I've heard it so many times from you, but you know, we'll have bricks that could be named, and we'll have a lot of different opportunities for people to be involved in this project. And we're going to create those opportunities for you. So, but by all means, if somebody has $12 million lying around, we'll name this place after you. So.
Thank you very much, Councilor Mazzoni, and thank you for your question, Joyce Crowley, excuse me. Our next question comes from Julian Mazzoni, 49 Parkside. Mr. Mayor and Council, I hope everyone is doing well. Does the town own the Train Tower Museum, and are there plans to reopen it? Not in the short term, Julian. The town does own the building, but right now, with everything that's going on, we're not planning to reopen it just yet. The historian that's in there that works that museum, he's not able to work right now. And I think the people at the Informer that also use some of that space are working remotely as well. Question 2, are there plans to renovate Roy D. Locke Park since it's the last park that has not been renovated? 3, does the town plan on installing water fountains in the parks that don't have, like rugby? And 4th, I would like to recognize the work that Julian Hung of 255 Strathern North did on his effort to keep the park cleaned on the weekend. And before I turn it over to Councillor Yulin to answer questions 2 and 3, thank you very much, Julian, for the work you did. From what I understand, things got out of hand on the weekend with just the sheer influx of people that came in. So I appreciate, Julian, you mentioning it. And thank you very much publicly, Mr. Hung, for helping out. Councillor Yulin, if you could address the other 2 questions, please.
Yes, thanks very much for your question, Julian. You mentioned the park, and again, as I said earlier when I answered the question for another gentleman, Kevin, I believe, there are a couple parks that we still have to look at for rejuvenation, and that is one of them. So we'd be looking at that almost certainly in the next mandate rather than the few months that remain in this one. Water fountains, I personally think, is a great idea, and we should be having them in all park areas so people don't have to carry around plastic water bottles. But that again is a project that we're going to have to look at in the next mandate, who's ever around the table. But I would have to say I would throw my support behind that in a second. So thanks very much for the question. And please do ask it again when the time comes around in the next mandate when we can consider it again. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor Yulin, and thank you for your questions, Julian Mazzoni. Next questions come from Richard Moray, 12 Wolseley South. Why is the estimate of the recreation project $3 million cheaper than council's estimate 5 years ago when construction materials have doubled since the beginning of COVID? Question 2, does council feel a recreational project is more important to Montreal-Westers than dangerous lead levels, Health Canada, in their water? And how can council estimates of only $100 per household tax increase to Montreal-Westers be accurate when their own optimistic estimates the project will double our current debt of $13 million and $491,000 in interest to $26 million in debt and $982,000 in interest? For the first question, the project isn't exactly the same as the one that we went to in the first request for funding. This one does not include in the first phase the reconstruction of the soccer field and the reconstruction of the construction of a running track that were included in the original project. That will be a subsequent phase. So that was in 2020, and this one was the estimates of this one here were done in 2019. So the project are not exactly the same. And no, question 2, no, this is obviously a recreation project is not more important than lead in the water pipes. We're continuing to reconstruct our streets. We're not going to stop reconstructing our streets. We're redoing Fenwick this year. We redid 2 streets last year. So no, it's not a question of one or the other. It's 2 separate grants. It's 2 separate things completely. So you can't compare one to the other. And the third question, if I could ask Councillor Feeney to address it, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Moray. You know, the amounts you're quoting, we really can't respond to hypothetical numbers at the moment. As we've said again and again tonight, what's going to happen is as we get proper numbers for this whole project, we will be able to project how much our debt is going to be and therefore how much our interest payments are going to be. And we will be definitely sharing that with everyone. Just might be of interest to you, we do have a government grant for this, but a part of the government grant is they also compensate us for interest. So we get interest every year. When we get our government grant, we also get interest at a very favorable rate. So it's not necessarily that interest is going to double there. And then also to reiterate 2 other points that were made numerous times tonight. When we do look at this and we look at our debt, we are going to be guided by our strategic financial plan and also by our commitments to the residents. So thank you very much for your question, Mr. Moray.
Thank you very much, Councillor Feeney. Next question comes from Stan Carney at 449 Wolseley Avenue North. Having worked with the DRAPO administration on special diplomatic projects, the outdoor flag display at Montréal-Ouest City Hall bothered me until I saw Miss Plant outside Montreal City Hall on TV. The 3 flags as a background, it confirmed my suspicions that Montreal-Ouest doesn't follow proper flag protocol. Can you provide your source of proper flag display protocol? And can you tell me when you will make the necessary changes? Since 2018, the Quebec flag takes predominance by law. Please act accordingly. Mr. Carney, I will do the verification. Quite honestly, I'm not aware of flag protocols as such. So we'll have somebody do the verification and make corrections if we have to. When can we expect the lifting of the leaf blower ban, and how will you make sure that all property owners are made aware? Why aren't PSOs applying the noise restrictions regarding gas-powered leaf blowers used by some private contractors? Some you can hear them 4 houses away and are extremely loud. Councillor Torres, can you address that? Because I think you've been doing some homework on that. You're on mute, Councillor Torres. Thank you.
I'm coming. I can answer the first part, which is when can we expect the lifting of the leaf blower? Thank you, Mr. Carney, for sending this question. Just to let you know that I'm doing research concerning the use of leaf blowers in urban areas. And I'm doing the research and I will be presenting it to council quite soon so we can discuss how to proceed. I assume once we make a decision, it would be, we will let everybody know through e-bulletin and during our council meetings, and will also write in the Informer. However, I have to tell you that one of my propositions is not to lift the leaf blower ban. That's not one of the things that I'm aiming at, but we have to wait till we discuss it in council, and the results will be, we'll tell everybody. But it will happen, the discussion will happen quite soon. The research is done, I just have to need the time to present it to council. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Torres, and thank you for your questions, Mr. Carney. And we're at about 15 minutes already, so we've gone over our time. I'll just do this one last question, and then, like I said, the questions, and I'll name the other people that asked the questions. They'll come answer directly to them in an email in the next couple of days. So Jennifer Melnick, 140 Ballantyne South. I recently participated in the tree giveaway. Nice idea. People need more trees in their yards. My suggestion is, there are several large, beautiful centennial trees in the neighborhood, species that obviously do well in this environment for the past 100+ years. Would it be feasible to collect seeds from these trees by residents and have them grown as the next generation of the giveaway trees? This would be a real story of urban rejuvenation. Also, I find the city can plant significantly more trees on public land. For example, along the train tracks. There's no need for more grass. And the second question, my question is regarding the new rec center. Lots of talk about this project. Has the business model been established and studied that this new facility will be self-supporting? Meaning, will this facility make enough money to support itself financially, or will this be a tax burden for residents to continually support? Are the proposed facilities, rink, gym, pool, profitable and in demand by the neighborhood? Please make pool indoor so that it can be used year-round and support itself financially. Season is too short and not accommodating for everyone, especially the elderly, due to outdoor temperatures and the water is not being heated. So for your first question for the trees, it's an interesting project. Thank you for your suggestion. We have an urban tree planting program which advocates the diversification of tree species so that we don't end up with another emerald ash borer problem. And we want to increase the number of trees planted annually. There may be some restrictions about doing things along the train tracks because very often that's not necessarily our land. But it's an interesting project, and we'll see if there's anything we can do to incorporate that. And in terms of your second question about the self-financing of a recreation center, let me start by saying, in general, recreations in municipalities are not self-sufficient. They're an expense. A pool's an expense, an arena's an expense, a civic center's an expense, a gymnasium's an expense. Very often, or most often, they are not revenue generators, there are deficits. The idea is to make sure that any kind of deficits are reasonable. And in this business model that we're working on, our plan includes both the construction and the operation of the center. Of course, there's other ways to absorb any kind of additional maintenance costs, and that could be by an ongoing capital campaign. There's a lot of things to look at there. But yes, those things are incorporated into a business model. But as I said, I wanted to preface it, in general, recreation facilities are not money generators. They are expenses for the town. So that's it in terms of what I'll read out. We had a question from Ellen Moore about where the library is going to be, Maria Cesari about safety concerns on her local street, Kathy Faludi about smoking, vaping, and cannabis, Mike Illy about an update to the parking garage at the Bellevue Apartments, Kenneth Saldana, questions about the project, Régis Worms, questions concernant le nouveau projet de la nouvelle arena, Jean McNeish about the new project, and Bill Olszewski about gatherings with the relaxation of the rules about whether or not gatherings or block parties will be allowed. So those answers will come to you subsequently via email. So thank you very much for these questions, folks. And we're going to continue back with our meeting now, the regular part of our meeting. Hang on a second here. There we go. All right, so now we're at contracts. There's nothing there. We're going right to number 10, administration and finances, approval of disbursements for the period of April 24th to May 28th, 2021. Councillor Feeney, please.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I move that the list of accounts payable from April 24th to May 28th, 2021, totaling $580,815.61 be approved and paid as listed.
Thank you very much. Councillor Feeney, can I have a seconder, please?
Mr. Mayor, I second that motion.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mazzoni. All in favor, please?
Aye.
Thank
Aye.
you very, very much. Hang on a second here, folks. There we go. Sorry about that. Délégation, 10B, délégation des pouvoirs pour le mois de mai 2021. Je peux avoir quelqu'un pour proposer?
Oui, Monsieur le maire, je propose de approuver le rapport du directeur général concernant l'exercice des pouvoirs délégués en vertu du règlement numéro 2005-002 pour les mois de mai 2021, excusez-moi. C'est ça.
Merci. Merci, la conseillère Yulin. Je peux avoir l'appui, s'il vous plaît?
Je le prie.
Merci, la conseillère Torres. Tout en faveur, s'il vous plaît?
Oui.
Merci. L'amendement à la résolution 2021-04-29-005. Comme j'avais mentionné tout à l'heure, on a adopté un amendement pour notre résolution concernant le programme TEC, la taxe sur l'essence et la contribution du Québec. Le gouvernement nous a exigé une petite révision dans notre résolution. Alors, ça, c'est le petit changement qu'on a besoin d'aborder. Je peux avoir quelqu'un pour le proposer, s'il vous plaît?
Oui, je propose que les paragraphes suivants soient ajoutés au dispositif de la résolution numéro 2021-0429, trait d'union 005, concernant une demande d'aide financière en vertu du programme de la taxe sur l'essence et de la contribution du Québec, TEC, pour l'année 2019 à 2023. Que la Ville atteste par la présente résolution que la programmation des travaux ci-joints, version numéro 2, comporte des coûts réalisés véridiques et reflète les provisions des coûts de travaux admissibles.
Merci, la conseillère Torres. Je peux avoir l'appui, s'il vous plaît?
Oui, je l'appuie.
Merci, la conseillère Yulin. Tout en faveur, s'il vous plaît?
Oui.
Oui.
Merci. Number 11, the Urban Department. First part is a demolition request for 45 Westminster South. That's the old adult library building. So if I'm going to ask Councillor Feeney just to give a little update, a little précis on the demolition request, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do hope most of you are on our e-bulletins and that you have seen this demolition request and all the information that's behind it, but I will give an explanation. When there is a demolition request, there's a public notice concerning that, which is posted in the newspaper. And that was done, this was posted in the Suburban. That's the paper that we use. It's coming out weekly, and it's also available online. And a notice is also posted on the property and on our website. There has been a notice. The town website also included a set of documents pertaining to this particular file. Objections could be sent within 15 days, and 4 were received. In compliance with the government decrees and the current state of sanitary emergency, in other words, we can't hold a public meeting as we would normally be doing, a further consultation period of 15 days followed, during which other comments could be sent. And actually some letters went out to people in the surrounding area to notify them of the project as well. So 7 residents from 4 addresses made their views known in 3 various emails. So when the demolition committee, which is actually the council, we serve as a demolition committee, when we have to treat a demolition request, we take all this information very seriously. We look at the objections filed by the residents, which we did, and then we weigh them against some of the other positive aspects of the project to decide which way to move forward. So that is what we have done in this case. That's the process. And so now we're going to move forward and with a resolution with our decision on the demolition. Okay, so whereas a demolition request has been filed with respect to the building mentioned in title of this resolution, along with a construction project for a mixed-use building in its place, as a program for the utilization of the vacated land under bylaw number 2016-010. Whereas council considered the condition of the immovable that is the subject of the application, the deterioration or improvement of the architectural appearance and aesthetic character of the neighborhood, the quality of life in the neighborhood, the intended use of the vacated land, the housing needs in Montreal-Ouest, the economic and physical benefits for the town and residents, the objections and comments received from citizens, and the observations of the Planning Advisory Committee so far. Whereas council also considered the report and recommendations made by the Urban Planning Department, whereas council is convinced of the advisability of the demolition in conjunction with the development of the vacated land, taking into account the public interest and the interest of the parties for the following reasons. Number one, it would allow for an increase and a diversification of the town's housing inventory, which is lacking on the island of Montreal. It would also address the need for new housing units of various types identified in several public consultations conducted as part of the MATA program. Second, it would allow for the extension of the commercial offer on the southern portion of Westminster Avenue, which would invigorate the town center. Third, it would allow for the erection of a building better integrated in the environment of the town and which exterior would better be harmonized with the architecture of the town. Fourth, it would lead to an increase to the tax base in keeping with the strategic financial plan adopted in 2017 by the town. This would permit the town to invest more in its infrastructures and its residents. Whereas the Municipal Council is acting as demolition committee by virtue of Article 15 of bylaw number 2016-010 concerning the demolition of immovables in accordance with Article 148.0.3 of the Act respecting land use planning and development, CQLR Chapter A-19.1. Therefore, I move that the demolition request for the existing building located at 45 Westminster Avenue South be accepted, along with a preliminary program for land utilization, subject to the site planning projects and architectural integration program, and under the following conditions. Here are the conditions. That the issuance of the demolition permit is pending on the approval and signing of the municipal work agreement for the relocation of the underground infrastructure, water and sewer pipes. The fencing surrounding the demolition site must be closed at the end of each workday. Submit a trucking route to the Urban Planning Department for the trips in and off the demolition site of the heavy machineries and trucks. The plan will be revised by the the plan will be reviewed by the Urban Planning, Public Works, and Public Security departments before being approved. Truck and heavy machinery trips must be avoided on Avon Road between Westminster South and Ronald Drive. Sound and dust barriers will be installed as to attenuate as much as possible the inconvenience caused by the demolition process, given the proximity of the residential buildings surrounding the site. Fog cannon dust suppression system is recommended in order to contain the dust on site. An inventory on the condition of the adjacent buildings must be done prior to the commencement of the demolition project shall be monitored closely by the project monitored by the project manager in order to avoid damages to the surrounding properties caused by vibrations. Once the demolition process is finished, a final survey on the surrounding buildings' conditions shall be done. In keeping with Article 20 of bylaw number 2016-010, a monetary guarantee for the performance of the program for land reutilization shall be provided by the applicant owner in the amount of $68,100. And finally, the owner and or his representatives, contractors, and subcontractors shall be fully responsible for any damages caused to adjacent properties by the demolition process, as the case may be. In consequence, the town shall not be held liable for any claims that could arise to this effect, and the owner shall undertake to release and hold harmless the town from any such claims for damages.
Thank you very much, Councillor Feeney. Thanks for the précis, and thank you for the resolution. Can I have somebody second that, please?
I second that, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Yulin. All in favor, please?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much, folks. Now we're going on to the Site Planning and Architectural Integrations Programs, the SPAIP. Councillor Feeney?
Okay, thank you again. As I said, this has been a busy month for the Urban Planning Department. So I move first to acknowledge receipt of the minutes of meeting held by the Planning Advisory Committee, PAC, on May 26, 2021. Second, to approve as presented under the SPAIP the following plans submitted to this meeting in accordance with the recommendations of the PAC as outlined in the minutes. 28 Crestwood, reconstruction of front landing and capping of it with pavers. 13 Crestwood, replacement of 7 windows, the front door and siding. 170 Strathern, replacement of a French door by a patio door in the back. 162 Strathern North, replacement of front landing and stairs and installation of railings. 57 Ballantyne North, replacement of the front door and the window above the front door, reconstruction of the canopy over the front entrance, replacement of the front stairs, landing and railings, and addition of 2 new skylights on the roof. 162 Northview, replacement of railings on the front porch. 232 Westminster, replacement of 3 windows. 10 Fairfield, reconstruction of the front stairs and landing and installation of railings. 234 Westminster, replacement of 6 windows. 48 Crestwood, reconstruction of front landing in pavers. 127 Wolseley North, replacement of the front door. 181 Bedbrook, construction of a 1-story extension in the backyard, modifications to openings and window replacement. Third, to approve with conditions under the SPAIP the following plans submitted to this meeting in accordance with the recommendations of PAC as outlined in the minutes. 56 Curzon, replacement of the 2nd floor rear extensions cladding material. And fourth, to defer the examination of the following plans to a next meeting of this council in accordance with the recommendations of the PAC as outlined in the minutes. 17 Ballantyne South, demolition of a 3-season structure in the back and construction of a 1-story extension, replacement of the front door and 2 windows, as well as the elimination of a window on the side facade. 317 Brock North, reconstruction of the main building. Reconstruction of the front landing and stairs. 45 Westminster South, demolition of the main building and construction of a new mixed-use building.
Thank you very much, Councillor Feeney. Can I have a seconder, please?
I second that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Yulin. All in favor, please?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Councillor Feeney, grab a glass of water before I ask you to move on to the next.
I think I will.
There you go.
All right.
Go ahead, man. The next one is a minor exemption request for 45 Westminster South. So, Councillor Feeney, if you could just give us a quick précis of the individual matters on that one, please.
Okay, so this is the new building to be built on the library lot. And the owner and developer have asked for a few minor exemptions. And so there is this process we must go through to study them, to see if prejudice is caused by giving them, by not giving them, etc. So PAC did study this file, and in fact, they studied it over 2 meetings. And just to give you a précis here, you will see that they were not all accepted. There was one that was outright refused. There were 2 that were initially not approved, but we've asked the owner to go back and make changes, and then we were pleased with the changes that they had made, so they were then approved. And there was a 3rd one, which again we deferred because we asked them to do further study. And I think it's important to just let you know a little bit about this one. PAC was concerned about the prejudice potentially caused to surrounding neighbors by this building. And so when they looked at the request for an obstruction into the construction line, we asked that a shade study be presented. We looked to see how that would impact the neighbors around. But then in addition to that, after we got the first shade study, we wanted to see what would be the impact if they built the building without these particular minor exemptions, but built it as to the biggest building that they could build on that particular lot. And then we made the comparison. And in fact, we found out that the shade study from the building that would have been built according to all the standards would have been a little bit higher. It would have been they could have had a higher building. It would have shed even more shadow on there. So based on that, we did decide to allow that minor exemption as well. So that is the précis, and then Councillor Yulin will go through and detail each one of these requests. But that's the outline.
Thank you very much, Councillor Feeney. Go ahead, have your glass of water. So if I could have Councillor Yulin, if you could move the motion, please.
Certainly, Mr. Mayor. I move that the plans and requests submitted to the May 5th and May 26th, 2021 meetings of the Planning Advisory Committee be approved in accordance with bylaws 2020-002 and G18-0005 for the following minor exemptions from the Schedule of Uses and Standards in effect under Article 3.2.2, Paragraph 5 of Article 4.2.1, Article 4.6.3, Articles 3.3.13, and Articles 3.1.9 of the zoning bylaw, and from the normative definition of building height in permit bylaw number 2009-00011. There's a lot of numbers here, I apologize. Regarding the immovable located at 45 Westminster South in zone MA1. 2, and here we get to the actual refusal or allowance. Number 1, to refuse the construction of balconies having a projection onto the public right-of-way by 2 feet 6 inches. To allow the construction of a shed in the backyard, the east side, attached to the main building for the purpose of a garage ventilation, while sheds are prohibited for the apartment buildings, the consequence of accepting this request being to overlook this prohibition. And to allow the construction of a masonry wall 4 feet in height, while the sleeper wall cannot be more than 2 feet in height, the consequence of accepting this request being to reduce this requirement by 2 feet. And to allow the construction of a mezzanine, which height is 3.3 meters, while the maximum is 2.5 meters, the consequence of accepting this request being to exceed this requirement by 0.08 meters. And to allow the setback of the mezzanine in relation to the facade on Westminster, the west side, be 2.9 meters, and that the relation to the facade on Avon, the south side, be of 4 meters, while the setback must be the equivalent of twice its height, and therefore 6.6 meters. The consequence of accepting this request being to reduce this requirement by 3.7 meters on the Westminster, on Westminster, and 2.6 meters on Avon. Let's move down a little here. Next, to allow the building to encroach the line of non-construction in the second half of the building towards the back, where the maximum height of the building in the back is set to 9.14 meters, and in the front is set to 15.24 meters, while the height of the proposed building in the back is 10.73 meters. The consequence of accepting this request being to exceed the limit by 1.59 meters. And lastly, to allow the construction of an additional story, while the maximum number is set to 3 according to the Schedule of Uses and Standards, and a mezzanine that occupies more than 40% of the floor below the floor below is considered another story. The consequence of accepting this request being to overlook this limit.
Thank you very much, Councillor Yulin. Can I have a seconder, please?
Yes, I second that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Feeney. All in favor, please?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Demande de délégation mineure 27 Ballantyne North. Je vais demander à Councillor Feeney de faire un petit précis encore. Please go ahead, Councillor Feeney.
Okay. Okay. This is a new request that came, a new homeowner who on 27 Ballantyne North, who wants to build a deck in the back, and it's actually already a deck there. But because of the setback on the property, there would not be, if he wants to take it out, there was not sufficient place to rebuild it. The house is set quite far back, so it wouldn't even allow, a place for even a walkthrough. So as he's replacing the one that currently is there, the owner did request letters from all the nearby neighbors to see if they would be in agreement with him going ahead with this, and they all did. So based on that, PAC decided that they would go ahead and allow this particular request.
May
So
I just
as-
ask a question to Councillor Feeney? Is this so basically replacing the deck that is there, the same size of deck?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it is. In fact, I believe he's going to be using patio stones or something, which would be actually less noisy than the deck. So yes, that is the case. Yeah.
Thank you
Et puis,
very
je
much.
pense que c'est Madame Torres qui va présenter la résolution. Merci.
Yeah, thank you very much, Councillor Feeney. Go ahead, Councillor Torres.
Yes. Merci. Je propose d'accepter les plans soumis à la réunion du comité consultatif d'urbanisme tenue le 21 avril 2021, conformément aux dispositions du règlement 2020-002 et G-18-0005 et la demande suivante de dérogation mineure à l'article 4.1.9 et au paragraphe 7 de l'article 4.1.10 du règlement de zonage et ce qui a trait à l'immeuble situé au 27 Valentine Nord dans la zone A-5, afin de permettre la construction d'un patio avec une marge de recul arrière nulle au lieu du minimum d'1 mètre. L'acceptation de cette demande ayant pour effet de réduire les normes de 1 mètre.
Merci, la conseillère Torres. Je peux avoir de l'appui, s'il vous plaît?
Oui, je l'appuie.
Merci, la conseillère Yulin. Tout en faveur, s'il vous plaît?
Oui.
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 Merci. Recreation and Culture, Recreation and Sports Center, the Capital Campaign. As I mentioned before, we're going to be naming the Capital Campaign chairperson, and we're some other committees that will work in conjunction during the length of the campaign. So if I could have Councillor Mazzoni, please.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Mr. Mayor, I move that a steering committee be constituted for the purposes of a capital campaign for a new recreation and sports center in Montreal-West to be responsible for reviewing, receiving, and administering all donations in an appropriate manner and for coordinating the solicitation and recognition activities. I also move that this committee be made up of volunteers and chaired by Mr. Scott McKenzie as campaign president. That a donations review committee be constituted as a subcommittee being comprised of the campaign president, the town director general, the campaign advisor, the town clerk, and a campaign accountant to be responsible for implementing and recommending changes as necessary to the proposed donations policy. That an administration committee be constituted as a subcommittee being comprised of members appointed by the town director general to be responsible for implementing and operationalizing the administrative process. And finally, Mr. Mayor, that the proposed organizational chart, donation acceptance policy, and donor relations program and guidelines be approved.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mazzoni. Can I have a seconder, please?
I second it.
Thank you very much, Councillor Torres. All in favor, please?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. There's nothing under human resources. There's nothing under appointments, nothing under deposit of documents. We get to avis de motion, lecture, adoption de règlement. Je donne avis de motion de la présentation à une prochaine séance de conseil du règlement intitulé « Règlement amendant le règlement de gestion contractuelle numéro 2019-004 ». Un projet de règlement fut déposé ce soir au conseil et mis à la disposition du public. Just to let you know, folks, that's a little change that we have to make at the request of the provincial government to our contract management policy. They want to ensure, they want all municipalities across the province to insert something to favor Quebec contractors where possible. So that's the gist of it, but it's in the project that we're depositing tonight. It's just an avis de motion. It's just a notice of motion for tonight. Like I said, nous avons reçu une question qui provenait de Natalie Garson sur la rue Ballantyne. Ça a été demandé concernant le centre récréatif. C'était concernant une parc canin derrière le chose et j'ai déjà répondu à ça. La deuxième question, laisse-moi le lire. Would it be great to, can we create a separate changing area that is gender neutral? So that is something that we will also take under advisement, and we will pass that along to the architects who will end up designing the facility. So that's it. There are no other questions asked at second question period. So je peux voir quelqu'un pour proposer la levée de séance, s'il vous plaît.
Well, I'll do it if no one else.
Wait. Okay, well, we were sorry, just getting off mute there. Oui, Monsieur le maire, je propose de lever la séance.
Merci, la conseillère Yulin. Je peux voir l'appui, s'il vous plaît.
Je l'appuie.
Merci, la conseillère Torres. Tout en faveur, s'il vous plaît.
Oui.
Oui.
Thank you for your patience, everyone. Merci pour votre patience et votre assistance ce soir. Have a good evening. And apparently the Canadians won. So there you go. So, all right. So have a good evening, everybody. Bonsoir tout le monde. Merci.
Go Habs go.
Aye.
Bonsoir.